What's up YouTube? This is Kyle with Carve Creative. We got Zach behind the camera today, and today we're going to be showing you guys how to change the tire on the Onewheel XR Classic. So we're going to have fun today changing this tire, but I'm really going to focus heavily on one step of the tire change, and that's getting the tire off the hub. On Reddit and Facebook, I have seen some wild posts of people using knives, saws, whatever means possible to get their tire off the hub, and please do not do that. It's not safe. Watch this video. We got a couple steps that are gonna make it extremely easy so you can get that tire off the hub and get on the street as quick as possible. Let's get into it. For my hand tool today, I'm gonna be using my tried and true DeWalt gyroscopic drill. I've been using this thing for like 4 years now, same one, and it's solid, so saves me a ton of time. So I'm thinking that this board is gonna be quite similar to what we've seen with the GT, and I actually know that because I've taken it apart already. As you can see here, I've already switched my tire, and I actually recorded a whole video of me switching my tire, but I did such a bad job of it that Zach came out today to help me kind of redeem myself, because I was like, no, we're not doing this. I'm sorry, I can't. We got to redo it. So that's how much I care about you guys and how much we care about you guys. We're doing the whole thing again because we want to make sure that you see in great detail how to do this. So as you can see here, took off my deletes and it's looking exactly like the GT. We'll take a look here with this view. Just see a little bit of that battery box exposed and our controller. So now I'm going to flip it and take off my bumpers. So we've seen this in the video from Fix My PEV that these bumpers are very similar to what we had on the GT, but these are a little bit better. I will say that they feel better, and they also added the 2 screws on the front bumper, and rather than having to slide that thing on the rails, you can just set the bumper right on top now, which is very nice. So they are improving, which is important. So yeah, I've taken this board apart a couple times, and it's very nice to take apart. It's easy. There's a couple of things that they did to ensure that you put it together properly. If you see here, a lot of people will like flip the board upside down. What I'm actually doing is I'm loosening, and as I'm loosening, I'm pinning this bit over to the side so that I can just lift up and then get underneath this thing. They made it very simple with the bumpers and which screw you want to use. Basically, the way that I think about it with the bumpers is this top surface. So the higher surface here is going to be the shorties, and then the ends are going to be the 2 long ones. So on the Classic XR, not the XR Classic, I think we had probably 4 to 5 different screw sizes, but then there was like 3 different types of screws and bolt heads too. So they definitely have streamlined things and made it a little bit more simple, and that's a very good thing. We don't need to be putting super long screws into our battery boxes, and that's what people were doing. Okay, so I got these out of here, and as I said before, rather than sliding up, this thing just pops right off there. And this is like 1 day's worth of dirt. I'm gonna be removing my foot pads, and before I do that, I'm gonna see if I can just remove this foot pad collar by hand. This is also very, very important. So what people will do, and it's more so when they're putting it back on, but when folks are taking these off or putting them together, you can actually spin that collar too much and strip it out. You do not want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab it with my 2 fingers, and with a lot of pressure, I'm going to loosen. So lefty, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So I'm going to go to the left, and there we go. I just felt a tiny little bit of resistance, and I pushed past that, and the second I push past that, I'm gonna just stop because I know I'm good. So now once I've done that, I can spin this collar to the left and just slowly remove that. I'm wiggling it back and forth, you see? Boom, and that's it. Now I can remove this foot pad. It's gonna be the long screws. And if you look right here, this is kind of what I was talking about. So they got these grooves here, and that is for the bumpers. So they go on there really nicely, and they're kind of just set where they need to go. I love that. I'm gonna remove these 2 back screws. There we go. I do not know what Future Motion says the official way to remove their tires, but what I've been doing for many years is the one rail method. It makes life very easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by, on the opposite side of my handle, removing my 2 axle bolts. After that, I'm going to come over to this side and I'm going to remove my 4 rail screws here. After I do that, once I remove these, it's just going to kind of fall apart. To remove my axle bolts, as you can see, I've got this large ratchet and I've got the TP45 bit on there. And when you're removing these, make sure you put downward pressure so that the bit doesn't fall out of the top of the head there, and just give it nice even pressure until it loosens up, and then you can go faster. So I'm going to remove these all the way. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this board upside down, and I am going to remove my handle plate here on the bottom before I remove the rail, because I'm not going to be able to remove it without that off. And that's something that's different from the GT. So these are actually one of the few different screw styles, and it's the same screw head as you can see, but it's just a different style screw. And now I am going to remove my 4 rail screws. After my rail screws, then I can start with my axle bolts. If you're going to do this and it's really hard for you, make sure that you're using the tool correctly. You want to have your hand out as far as possible for leverage. You don't want to be holding it right here. Make sure that the head is nice and square in the screw head, and make sure that you're applying even pressure. And as always, if something doesn't feel right, just stop, because when people over tighten, that's when big issues can happen, and you can end up having a headache drilling a screw. It's not fun. So just make sure you know what you're doing. And if you don't feel comfortable doing this kind of work, make sure you do some research and find a shop nearby, because there is usually one-wheel shops, but not always. And if that's the case, then you have to send them off to Future Motion. So I've removed all the screws and my axle bolts. I'm just going to kind of shake this back and forth and very easily set this thing down. I don't want to put too much tension on this cable here. And now, as you can see, the last thing that I need to remove is my motor cable. So same deal. I'm going to grab this and spin it until I feel the resistance. Just past that, now you can see this collar can spin freely. I can just slowly take that off. Now I can take this whole piece here and set it aside. I won't need it for about 10 to 15 minutes. This as well. So now we need to remove the tire from the motor. When I do this, I want to make sure that I don't put pressure on this cable. I don't want to pinch it on my tabletop. So what I'm going to do is grab 2 1x1s that I've cut to about 1 foot and put those down first. And what I do is I just try to make sure that it's at least the width of my axle block here, and I'll just kind of sneak my cord, my wire, just like so. And now everything is good and protected, and I'm not going to be putting stress on that cable. Before I remove this tire from the hub, I need to get all the air off of it. If I don't do that, it's going to be very hard to remove it. So I'm going to remove my valve cap. And inside of there, you can see there is a valve stem. Now I'm going to use my valve stem removal tool and just slowly spin. And there is air in here, so I want to be careful, but I'm just going to remove that. As you can see, I got some armadillos in there. Here's my valve core. I'm gonna set that aside along with my cap. I wanna make sure I use those later. So now we have a tire that has no air in it, but it does have armadillos, so I need to be careful here. But this is a very important part that we're talking about. So people seem to really struggle with this step. And what I'm gonna do to make my life a lot easier, first of all, is I'm gonna lower this table, because right now this table is up too high. I wanna make sure that I can put my weight downward on this tire. So I'm gonna get this table quite a bit lower here. Now I got my table down to a really nice height. So I'm gonna grab this tire and I'm gonna just slowly peel it off the hub. I'm gonna take my wrist and bring them this way forward. Now, in order to do that, I wanna make sure that it's not gonna move. So I'm gonna get it nice and close to me. I'm gonna grab right here and just put pressure down. So now I'm gonna do it, same thing on this side. I'm gonna grab it. I'm kind of using my hip to hold it here so it doesn't flip upward, but I'm literally just grabbing it. Boom. No tools at all. So everyone that's trying to sell you all these tools, you don't need them. I'm sorry. Just use your brain, and then we're going to show you the next part because you don't need a tool for that either. Now, this next part is the part where most people will get extremely frustrated, the second part of that. And for this part, it's really important that you use the groove to your advantage, okay? So this part, I'm actually gonna kind of cheat. You can see I've got my valve right here. I'm gonna take my wrist, I'm gonna pinch here, and then with this hand, I can just lift the tire over the hub. The second one is much easier. What I'm gonna use is my palm here. I'm gonna stabilize the hub, and I'm just gonna grab on and just put pressure down. As you can see, this groove is a huge part of this whole process. You need to use it for the initial getting the tire off, and then when you come to the other side, you also need to use it to get off that last little bit. Once I get that, I can clean off this if I want to. I'm just gonna leave it because I'm gonna be putting more armadillos in here. We kind of pulled a quick one on you guys here today. Rather than just doing a tire change, we're also gonna do a motor change. So this is the stock XR Classic motor, and while it's been nice, I do want to have a little bit more punch. I want to have a little bit more juice. I'm very used to the power of my GTS Rally. I've gotten really accustomed to that, and I found there's a few times where I'm giving it the gas and I feel like I want just a little bit more. So according to what Future Motion's claiming, they're saying you can get about 14% more torque using the GTS motor. So what we're gonna do is we are gonna take this Cloud tire and I am going to put it on this GTS motor. So this is the S series motor. It's supposed to be upgraded in a few different areas, from the magnets being better to the windings being tighter, and then also it has better bearings. It has NSK bearings. So really excited about this thing. It's been performing amazingly for me on my Rally. I've really liked that board a lot. There's a few things that I don't like, just like the larger footprint of the GT in general, but the motor and how the board has been performing for me has been insane. So I'm excited to see what that extra 14% is like on this motor here. So what do we got here? We got, this is new. I've never seen this in my life before. Oh, it's just like a spacer. Still though, that's kind of cool, right? Let's save that. Add it to the shelf of fame. Okay, so, well, we got another one on the other side too. I'm not gonna save that one though, that'd be a little excessive. From just looking, the only thing that looks different is the paint job, just a little blue here, but like everything else looks the exact same, right, Zach?
Yeah, I'm not seeing any difference at all.
Feels heavier, but I'm not sure. Do you think it would be heavier?
I don't know. I don't think the magnets would change as weight, but maybe it does.
There's absolutely no science happening here, just so you guys know. This is all just based on feel. My right arm is probably stronger too, so this is all messed up, but yeah, I don't know. Let's just try it out. Let's get this thing on here. I just want to ride it. We are gonna do kind of the same thing, putting this thing back together. I'm gonna start by having my cord and my blocks here. I want to make sure I don't mess up my nice new cord. And we're gonna use the same sort of method that we did taking the tire off. So we have the groove. You can probably see the groove a little bit better now that it's not all full of crap. Some tires are gonna be directional, and when they are directional, that will be indicated by an arrow on the tire. This one is not directional. One way to know how to put the tire on is from the motor cable here. So basically what you're gonna wanna do is the motor cable is pointed forward. You're also gonna have the arrow pointed forward with that motor cable. What I'm gonna do here is I'm going to take this tire and just kind of slowly spin it onto this rim here. It's pretty simple. Now for the top, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my wrist, the palm of my wrist here, and I'm gonna press down on the bead, get it below the rim. And then my other hand I'm going to use to peel it around the hub slowly. And there you go. So now we got both sides on the hub. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this thing up with armadillos right away. This is a slick tire. I plan on riding this thing primarily in the streets. So I want to make sure that if I run over glass or nails, that I'm not worrying about a small little hole in the tire. So I'm gonna throw a bottle in here. If this tire was treaded, I would be a little less inclined to do it. You got a little bit more protection with the treaded tire. But because this is a slick and it's a very lightweight tire, I'm gonna use it. We got the classic Armadillo's 8-ounce bottle here. I always try to cut it as close to the end as possible so that I can stick that sucker right in the valve stem and not make a big mess. I'm gonna use the whole bottle. If this was like a re-up, and let's say in like a year, I was to be adding more, I would probably do like half of a bottle. And now we are ready to fill this thing with air. Now, in my early days of changing tires and having our little one-wheel shop that we had, I used to be very adamant about using like a tire strap and being really safe and all of those sorts of things. It is still important to use a tire strap. I know that this tire is going to set pretty easily. This is not a very stiff tire. If I was installing a treaded tire, I would absolutely recommend using a strap just to be safe. You might have to go up to like 70 to 80 PSI to get the beads to set. That's where things can get dangerous. This tire, I'll probably get both of them to set at like 20 to 30 PSI. So I'm not very worried about using a strap or a 5-gallon bucket to protect myself. Still at 25. There's one. Once it gets to like 50 is when I usually will start to stand back, but there we go. This is at 50 PSI right now, so I'm gonna try to just eyeball it to like 20 or so. If you were someone who was trying to really take care of this board and this setup and keep it nice the longest, you know, as long as possible, you could put bearing covers on. These are really nice bearings, and if you really wanted to last a long time, Float Life sells bearing covers made by Badger. They're awesome. I've used them many times. Not sure if I'm going to use them yet on this, but I'm just going to run it stock for a little bit. So now when we're putting this board back together, just going to do it all in reverse. So I'm going to start with the assembled portion of the board here. This is a new way to put these boards together for me anyways. I could not do this with the GT because the GT is not flat on the side. So this is kind of sweet, but I've been doing this. I did this the last time and I really liked it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, first of all, there's a groove on your axle blocks here, as you can see there. So I want that to be facing up. So when you get where you want to be, you'll feel it just kind of drop in place here. And now I can move this back and forth and it's not really going anywhere. So I'm gonna just start by plugging this in. And when I'm plugging it in, I'm gonna be very careful that this sleeve, first of all, I wanna make sure I'm plugged in all the way before I tighten that sleeve. So it's all the way on there. Now I can take this sleeve here and I'm starting to feel the resistance. I'm gonna go right past it. There it is. Now it's locked into place. I can Move it back and forth the same distance each side. That's how I know that this thing is locked and ready to go. So now what I'm gonna do is take my rail and get it on here. When you're doing this part, be very careful with your cable. Okay, the cable is like there's only one way that this cable can go in here, and you do not want to pinch your cable. So make sure that everything's in there good and square. And what I like to do here is I just barely hand tighten these two bolts here. I'm just trying to get this thing back together, make sure everything's in there good and square. So I'm gonna tighten these until I feel just a little bit of resistance, each one. There we go. After I get my axle bolts on this side hand tightened, I'm gonna go over to the handle side, and then after that, I can tighten down the axle bolts on the handle side. And when you're doing this, once again, make sure that you don't have any resistance. Get these also hand tightened down. After those are hand snug, you can take your 4 longer screws here, and we're gonna install our 4 top rail screws. All right, so now we can do our foot pads, and I do have the wooden foot pads coming for these, and I'm really excited about them. I don't know, there must be a little bit of a delay, but those are coming. Those should also help shed a little bit of weight on this setup, which is good. So when you're doing this, make sure that you put on the front foot pad before you do the bumper. It's gonna be really hard to plug this thing in with the bumper from the top side. So when you do this connector here, what I'm gonna do is just very gently plug it in, get your groove lined up. Now for this sleeve, I'm gonna lift it forward until I can't anymore, and then it's like a quarter turn. When I feel a little bit of resistance there, I know that it's locked in place. And to make sure I have it locked in good, I can try pulling out on it and make sure that it's not gonna pull out. Now we basically just have to finish the cosmetic stuff here. We're just gonna get our bumpers put back on. I would be interested to try out the free ride bumpers sometime. Those things look pretty nice. I'm curious if they're heavier or lighter than the stock ones.
I'm guessing they're probably heavier.
You think they're heavier?
Yeah.
Probably because they need to be, they're kind of like the bang bumpers. And with all of these little, I would say board assembly screws, you do not want to tighten these much at all. If you're using a screw gun that has torque settings, I would set it to the lowest torque setting. The only bolts on this whole board that I'm really going to be very heavy and reef on them as hard as I can would be obviously the axle bolts, because those are the ones that keep you safe. All these other screws, you don't want to go too crazy on them because you could very easily strip out these threads, and if you do that, then you're dealing with issues, and you'll have to send your board back to Future Motion or take it to a shop to get them repaired. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to put on here is my little cable clip, and I'm going to make sure before I do that nothing is pinched in here, which it looks good, it feels free. So basically this cover is just going to set right over there. I've seen people strip those out before, so be very careful with those ones. It's a weaker screw head. Last but not least, we got our little fender deletes, and then we get to rip this thing. Now, If this was a customer's board, or if this was just like my regular daily rider, I would say that you should definitely put thread locker on your axle bolts. At the rate we've been making videos and taking this board apart, I'm not gonna do it because we'll probably be taking it apart like tomorrow to do another video. So I'm just gonna leave it for now. But for tightening this down, you wanna really make sure that you're tightening this thing down as good as possible. You don't wanna over tighten it, but I'm really wanna be conscious about these bolts. I wanna make sure that they're good and tight because I want the board to ride smoothly. And if you have these things torqued improperly, it can actually make the whole board ride goofy. Everything's back together. Now, the scariest part of this whole thing is turning it on. We're good so far. We'll see if our sensor's good. Oh baby, we got the power. So, all right, well, we did it. The XR Classic tire change, and not only a tire change, but a motor swap as well. So we did a double whammy today. It was a ton of fun. Hope you guys learned something. If there's anything that we missed that we could do better on a future video, please let us know. If you enjoyed or gained anything from this video, please take the time to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us a ton. It also just lets us know if we're doing things right. If you guys are engaging with us, we know that we're doing things the way that we should be doing it. So please let us know. We hope to hear from you guys soon. Hope to see you soon. What do we got coming out, Zach? Anything?
Maybe some Vesk stuff, huh?
Yeah, I think it's time to do a little bit of Vesk stuff because Zach made a pretty sweet build, and I think he's got to show you guys that thing. So, all right. Well, you guys have a good one. Have a great week. We'll see you soon.